Keanu Reeves was leaving the supermarket carrying a few bags when he felt a light tug on his jacket. Turning around, he saw a 6-year-old girl with blonde hair wearing a pink dress. Her small fingers clutched the fabric tightly, and her wide eyes were filled with fear. For a moment, she just stood there trembling. Then, when she finally opened her mouth to speak, the 3 words she whispered made Keanu freeze for an instant. Without hesitation, he grabbed his phone and dialed the police. Before we continue the story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. A light evening breeze carried a mix of warm concrete and the fresh scent of nearby trees. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a simple jacket and sunglasses, exited the supermarket carrying a bag with a few groceries. He had always appreciated simplicity, and today was no different. Just another ordinary afternoon in Los Angeles. As he walked toward his car in the parking lot, lost in thoughts about what movie to watch that night, he felt a light impact against his leg. It was enough to make him stop in his tracks. Looking down, he saw a small blonde girl wearing a pink dress, breathless and visibly shaken. Her eyes were wide and bright, but filled with fear. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, as if she had been running for a long time. Keanu crouched down, placing his bag on the ground, and offered a gentle smile. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, trying not to startle her further. The girl hesitated. Her small lips trembled as if trying to form words, but nothing came out. She looked at him, but every few seconds, her gaze flickered past him, watching something or someone beyond his view. Keanu furrowed his brows and followed her gaze. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Just a few people leaving the store, getting in and out of their cars. But there was something about this child that unsettled him. "Are you lost?" he asked again, softening his voice even more. The girl tried to speak, but only a shaky breath escaped. Her eyes began to glisten with tears, which she was desperately holding back. Before Keanu could ask anything else, a woman's voice cut through the air. "There you are," a blonde woman said, walking toward them quickly. Keanu stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving the girl. The woman wore jeans and a light blue blouse. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she had a smile on her lips, but something in her eyes didn't match the sweetness of her expression. She crouched down and grabbed the girl by the shoulders. "My God, you scared me. You can't just run off like that," she exclaimed, trying to sound relieved. Keanu carefully watched the child's reaction. She didn't move, didn't smile, didn't show any recognition. Instead, she shrank a little, as if being touched by a stranger. The woman looked up at Keanu and smiled. "Thank you so much for staying with her. I'm her aunt." Keanu crossed his arms, analyzing the scene. The girl remained silent. "No, Auntie," came from her lips. No sign of relief, only fear. "Is she okay?" Keanu asked, noting how stiff the child seemed. Yes. She's just scared because she got lost for a moment." The woman laughed nervously, squeezing the girl's shoulders. "But everything is fine now, isn't it, sweetheart?" The girl did not respond. Instead, she dropped her gaze to the ground and remained motionless. Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen lost children before. They usually cried, ran to their parents, or at least spoke. But this girl? She looked truly terrified. He crouched down again and looked into her eyes. "Do you want to go with her?" he asked gently. The girl swallowed hard. Her tiny hands clenched into fists at her sides. She parted her lips slightly, but before any sound could escape, the woman tightened her grip on her shoulders. "Come on, sweetheart, say something. He's already helped us a lot," the woman said, her tone still sweet but with a subtle urgency. The girl looked away. The air between them grew heavier. Keanu was not a police officer or a detective, but his instinct screamed that something was wrong. He had always trusted his intuition, and at that moment, everything inside him told him this situation was far from normal. The woman maintained her smile, but her eyes narrowed slightly. She took the girl's hand and began pulling her away slowly, but deliberately. "Anyway, thank you again, Mr. Reeves. Everything is under control," she said. But before Keanu could say anything, the girl finally lifted her eyes to him. Her gaze pleaded for help, and in that instant, Keanu knew without a shadow of a doubt that something was very, very wrong. Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the way the girl shrank and avoided eye contact told him that this story was far from simple. And then the woman spoke. The soft evening breeze had suddenly turned into a sharp, cutting wind. Keanu kept his gaze fixed on the girl and the blonde woman standing before him. Every detail felt wrong, yet nothing was explicit enough to accuse her outright. The woman maintained a practiced smile, as if trying to project calmness. But her eyes were cold, calculating. She was trying to sound casual, but there was something about the rigidity in her posture that betrayed her true intentions. "Well, I think we should be going now," she said, pulling the girl by the hand. The girl hesitated for a fraction of a second, and Keanu didn't miss it. It was a hesitation full of meaning, a silent plea for help. Keanu forced a light smile. "You said you're her aunt?" The woman paused for a brief moment before responding, as if she needed to remember what to say. Yes. I'm her mother's sister. She always does this, running around everywhere. Kids, right?" She laughed nervously. Keanu caught the mistake. "What's her name?" he asked, crossing his arms. The woman's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. "Sophie," she answered quickly, as if she had anticipated the question. This time, Keanu studied the girl closely and noticed something strange. She recognized the name, yet she didn't react the way she should have. She didn't confirm it, didn't smile, didn't even look at the woman. That didn't make sense. If this woman was really her aunt, why didn't the girl look relieved to see her? The woman sensed the hesitation and tightened her grip on the girl's hand. Keanu saw the child shrink slightly, almost imperceptibly to someone who wasn't paying attention. That's when it clicked in Keanu's mind. The woman knew the girl's name before she had even spoken. He remembered something important. When he first found Sophie, she hadn't said a single word. So how did this woman know her name? Keanu's eyes narrowed. "So you're her mother's sister?" The woman laughed again, but this time it was forced. "That's right. Look, I appreciate your concern, Mr. Reeves, but everything is fine. No need to worry." Keanu glanced around. A few people walked through the parking lot, but no one seemed to notice the tension in the scene. It was as if he was the only one truly seeing what was happening. "If she's fine, why isn't she saying anything?" he pressed, keeping his tone calm, but making it clear he wasn't going to let it slide so easily. The woman stepped forward, still smiling, but her voice took on a firmer edge. "She's shy. She's always been. Besides, she's scared because she got lost. You know how kids are, right?" Keanu didn't respond immediately. He continued observing the girl. She still avoided eye contact, her body tense as if trying to disappear. The woman noticed Keanu's hesitation and squeezed the girl's hand harder this time. "Come on, sweetheart," she said, her tone almost commanding. The girl blinked several times as if holding back tears. She was scared. Keanu straightened up, keeping his voice friendly but firm. "Before you go, why don't we ask the store security for help, just to make sure?" "Everything is okay." The woman froze for a second. It was quick, but enough to confirm what Keanu already suspected. She blinked a few times, regaining control of her expression. "Oh, that won't be necessary. Like I said, everything's fine." Keanu took a small step back on purpose, just to see what the girl would do. Then it happened. The girl took a small step in the same direction, as if she wanted to move away from the woman without her noticing. The woman noticed and gripped her wrist so tightly that the child almost let out a small sound of pain. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but for Keanu, it was enough. The actor took a step forward again, placing himself between the woman and the girl. "I think it would be best to make sure everything is okay." The woman let out a forced laugh. "I understand that you want to help, but honestly, this is going a little too far." Keanu didn't respond. He looked directly into the girl's eyes. She opened and closed her mouth a few times, as if trying to say something but unable to. That's when the woman completely changed. Her smile vanished, her posture stiffened, and for the first time, Keanu saw a glimpse of anger in her cold eyes. She stepped forward, locking eyes with him, her voice now lower, filled with an ominous weight. "We don't have time for this anymore. Let's go, sweetheart." And then, without waiting for a response, she started dragging the girl away. The woman chuckled lightly, but her eyes were ice cold. "Don't worry, Mr. Reeves. Everything is under control." But then the girl looked at Keanu, and in that moment, he knew something was very, very wrong. Time seemed to slow down. Keanu felt the weight of every passing second, every subtle reaction from the woman, every movement from Sophie. The girl said nothing, but her eyes screamed. The blonde woman was now dragging her by the wrist, her expression no longer forced, but filled with a cold, calculated urgency. She wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. Keanu knew he had very little time to act. He looked directly at Sophie. Her eyes met his, and in that instant, he saw its silent desperation. Sophie discreetly pulled at her own hand, trying to free herself, but the woman tightened her grip, making the girl take a hesitant step forward. It was a silent plea, a stifled scream. Keanu took a slow, deep breath. If he acted impulsively, he might startle the woman, making her flee, and then he might never see that child again. He had to be careful. "You seem to be in a hurry," he said, watching the tension in the woman's expression. "But before you go, can the girl at least tell me she's okay?" The woman froze for a fraction of a second. It was just a moment, a reflex, but enough for Keanu to know he had touched a nerve. Sophie didn't react. The woman forced a smile. "She already did, didn't she?" Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Actually, no. She hasn't said a word." The woman pressed her lips together. Her eyes darkened slightly. "She's shy." "Shy or scared?" Keanu countered, his voice now a little firmer. The woman's posture stiffened. "Look, I really appreciate your concern," she said, trying to sound calm. "But we're leaving now." Keanu didn't move. "I just want to hear it from her." The woman's eyes scanned the parking lot as if looking for something, or someone. Keanu noticed the movement, and then he decided to test something. He took a small step back, as if he were about to let them go. Sophie tried to follow him. It was subtle, small, but for Keanu, it was all the confirmation he needed. The woman noticed immediately and tightened her grip on the girl's arm, pulling her back toward her. Keanu no longer had any doubts. He stepped in front of them, blocking their path. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice now carrying an unmistakable authority. The woman stopped abruptly. Her smile vanished completely. Her eyes narrowed, filled with barely concealed rage. "Look, I already told you I'm her aunt. This is getting out of hand now. Please step aside." Keanu looked at Sophie again. She was standing still, but her eyes were pleading. And then she did something that erased all of Keanu's doubts. She looked up at him and almost imperceptibly moved her lips, without making a sound. "Help." It was only a whisper, with no voice. But it was enough. Keanu acted instantly. "You can't take her." His voice was now low, firm, and unwavering. The woman's face paled for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Excuse me," she scoffed, forcing a sarcastic laugh. Keanu took a step forward, his presence commanding. "She doesn't want to go with you." The woman pressed her lips together for a moment. She seemed to be calculating her options. Her eyes darted around the parking lot, searching for something, a way out, an escape. Then her expression completely changed. She suddenly let go of the girl's hand and smiled as if nothing had happened. "Oh, come on, of course she does. Sophie, sweetheart, tell him everything is fine." Sophie's eyes welled up with tears. Keanu saw it, and he knew he couldn't hesitate any longer. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. The woman noticed and moved fast. She lunged to grab Sophie again, but the girl twisted away, trying to break free. And then everything happened in a split second. The girl finally looked up at Keanu, silently opening and closing her mouth, as if trying to form words. But before she could, The woman took a step forward, and her expression completely changed. The silence in the parking lot lasted only a second, and then everything exploded into motion. The woman grabbed the girl's wrist again, this time with force, yanking her abruptly away from Keanu. "Let's go, sweetheart." "Now." Her voice was low, urgent, laced with threat. Sophie let out a choked sob, trying to resist, but she was too small to fight back against the woman's strength. Keanu didn't hesitate anymore. He stepped into their path, blocking the way. "Let her go." The woman froze. Her eyes were now filled with pure hatred. "Get out of my way." Her voice was cold, sharp. All the fake sweetness was gone. Keanu didn't move. "If you're her family, then tell me." He narrowed his eyes. Why did she just ask for help? The woman clenched her teeth. Sophie looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, "Don't let this woman take me." Keanu felt a chill run down his spine, and in that moment, everything changed. The woman realized she couldn't fake it anymore. Her face twisted in fury. Without warning, she shoved Sophie aside and lunged at Keanu. But Keanu was ready. He caught her arms before she could push him, planting his feet firmly on the ground. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," the woman hissed, struggling against his grip. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Keanu replied, tightening his hold. "A kidnapper." For a brief instant, the woman's eyes widened in panic. And then she did something unexpected. She screamed, "Help! He's attacking me!" A few people in the parking lot turned their heads to look. Keanu remained calm. "Can someone call security, please? This woman is trying to abduct a child." The woman fought to break free again, but Keanu didn't let go. Sophie stood just a few feet away, her wide eyes locked on him. And then something shattered the air. For a second, everything stopped. The parking lot, the noise around them, the sound of cars. Keanu heard the girl's words echo in his mind, and at that moment, he knew he had to act fast before it was too late. The woman's scream echoed across the parking lot. A few people stopped what they were doing, turning to look, confusion written on their faces. Keanu didn't release his grip, but he also knew he couldn't just stand there. If he wasted too much time, the situation could turn against him. He had to act fast. With his free hand, he pulled out his phone and quickly dialed 911. "Hello, I need a unit at the Market Plaza parking lot. A woman is trying to abduct a child." The woman struggled violently, thrashing in an attempt to break free, but Keanu held her firmly. "You have no idea what you're doing," she hissed, her voice now dripping with pure desperation. Her eyes burned with hatred. Keanu ignored her and turned to Sophie. The girl stood frozen, her wide eyes gleaming with fear. She didn't know what to do. "Sophie, stay with me," Keanu called out, trying to keep her focused. The girl blinked a few times, as if breaking out of a trance. Then finally, she ran toward him, clinging to his arm. That's when all hell broke loose. The woman took advantage of the moment and yanked her arm with all the strength she had. Keanu lost his balance for a fraction of a second, and that was all she needed. She broke free and ran. "Hey, someone stop that woman!" Keanu yelled, but no one reacted fast enough. The kidnapper bolted through the rows of parked cars, running like a cornered animal. Keanu didn't hesitate. He grabbed Sophie's hand and took off after her. "Hold on tight, Sophie," he urged. The girl obeyed without question, her small legs struggling to keep up. The woman ran frantically, weaving between vehicles, desperate to escape. She knew that if she was caught, there was no turning back. Keanu was right on her heels. The woman turned and shot Keanu a look filled with pure hatred. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she sneered. But then, a new sound cut through the air, a desperate scream from the other side of the parking lot. The parking lot was in chaos. The woman weaved through the parked cars, desperate to escape. Keanu didn't hesitate. He raced after her, gripping Sophie's small hand tightly. He wasn't going to let her get away. Keanu's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He wasn't a police officer. He wasn't an action hero. In that moment, He was just a man trying to stop a child from being taken by someone dangerous. But the woman knew what she was doing. She wasn't just running randomly. She knew the area. Then a chilling realization hit him. She didn't choose Sophie at random. She knew her name before Sophie even spoke a word. And suddenly, the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. She had been watching Sophie before, inside the store. She must have been lurking, waiting for the right moment, and heard Sophie's mother calling her name. That explained everything. This wasn't a random abduction. This woman had planned everything, and Keanu couldn't let her escape. But before he could reach her, a scream tore through the air. "Sophie!" Keanu stopped abruptly. His head snapped toward the sound. A barefoot woman, her disheveled hair whipping in the wind, sprinted through the parking lot. Her eyes frantically scanned the rows of cars. Her lungs seemed ready to burst from how hard she was screaming. "Sophie! My God, where are you?" Sophie let out a choked sob, her tiny fingers clutching Keanu's hand even tighter. Then, in a small, trembling voice, she finally spoke. "Mommy." Her voice was a mix of relief and desperation. Keanu didn't hesitate. He scooped Sophie up into his arms and ran toward the woman. The second the woman saw her daughter, she let out a cry of pure relief. Her knees buckled beneath her as she collapsed to the ground, arms open wide. Keanu set Sophie down, and the girl sprinted into her mother's embrace. The two clung to each other, sobbing uncontrollably. The kidnapper, realizing what was happening, froze in place for a moment. She just stood there, as if calculating her next move. Then she turned sharply, trying to flee, but Keanu was already blocking her path. Keanu didn't need any more proof. He turned to the kidnapper, standing in her way. "You're not going anywhere." But the woman was already preparing her next move. Sophie's mother's desperate scream echoed across the parking lot, filled with panic and agony. Keanu didn't hesitate. He knelt down and gently released Sophie's hand, encouraging her to go. "Sophie, run to your mom." The little girl, who had been clinging to his arm the entire time, finally bolted toward the woman, calling her name. "Mommy." The mother fell to her knees on the pavement, arms wide open. The impact of their embrace was so powerful that both of them collapsed to the ground, crying together. "My love, my baby, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Sophie couldn't even answer. She just sobbed uncontrollably, burying her face in her mother's neck. The woman held her so tightly, as if she'd never let go again. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. But he couldn't relax yet. The kidnapper wasn't going to give up that easily. Keanu quickly turned back and found the woman standing just a few meters away, watching everything. Her face was pale. She realized she had lost, but instead of running, she stood completely still. Her eyes weren't filled with fear. They were filled with pure hatred. She looked directly at Keanu, and for the first time, he felt a real chill run down his spine. She didn't look like a criminal in panic. She looked furious. She wasn't just angry that she got caught. She wanted revenge. "You just made a huge mistake, you idiot," she said, her voice low, cold as ice. Keanu clenched his fists, but kept his composure. The only mistake here was thinking you could walk away with this child. The woman opened her mouth to reply, but she never got the chance. Sirens filled the air. Multiple police cars rushed into the parking lot, speeding toward them. For the first time, the woman's expression cracked. Now she was afraid. Her eyes darted around, searching for a way out. But as she saw the police surrounding the area, her shoulders slumped in defeat. And then the officers stepped out of their cars. "Sir, we'll need you to come with us to give a statement," one officer said, stepping forward. Keanu nodded. He glanced toward Sophie and her mother, still holding each other tightly. The little girl was crying softly into her shoulder. He knew he needed to stay a little longer. The officer pulled out a notepad, pen ready. "Can you describe exactly what happened?" Keanu recounted everything, from the moment Sophie ran into him in the parking lot to her silent plea for help, to the suspicious behavior of the woman. He described how the woman had tried to drag Sophie away, the chase, the confrontation, and how she reacted when she realized she had been caught. The officer nodded as he wrote, listening carefully. Then he said something that sent a chill down Keanu's spine. This woman was already wanted. Keanu's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? The officer sighed. We've received multiple reports in recent months. She's attempted to abduct children in other supermarkets and malls, but she was never caught. Keanu felt his stomach drop. Sophie wasn't the first, but she was the first one who got away. The officers assured Sophie and her mother were safe before taking them to a secure location. Keanu stood still for a moment, looking up at the darkening sky. He didn't know why this had happened to him, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't have ignored that look, because sometimes one single decision can change an entire fate. And today, Sophie was still alive, all because of that choice. As he turned to leave, Sophie looked back at him and gave a small, shy smile. Then she whispered the only words that needed to be said. "Thank you." Keanu smiled gently. Always ask for help when you need it. The world needs more brave people like you. Then he got into his car and drove away, leaving behind a parking lot that, on that day, had become the stage for an act of heroism and humanity. The world can be a scary place, but there will always be people willing to help. Small acts of courage can save lives. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.